Hello, welcome. We'll be starting here in a few minutes. We're coming live from Zoom and from Facebook right now. So we'll be allowing some people to join us here in the next 5 minutes or so until we get started. Tonight we have Bob Webster with us. So we'll be starting here in about 5 minutes. Welcome everyone as you're joining us. We'll be getting started here in the next few minutes. We're waiting for some more people on Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. Tonight we have a very interesting topic on the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire with Bob Webster. Welcome everyone. We'll be starting here in a few minutes, probably around 6:30. I'll get started, but we're just waiting for a few more people. People joining us on Facebook Live, welcome, as well as those admitting on Zoom. For Northern Kentucky History Hour, and of course, now with things opening up again, Northern Kentucky History Hour will only be once every other week, as a reminder. So we won't be having one next week, but we'll be having one on the 14th. Also, if you are joining us via Zoom, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself. It should have muted you automatically, but just make sure that your mute button is turned on. Just be easier to get through everything. You can keep your camera on if you'd like. If not, then you can turn it off. No big deal. We're going to wait a few more minutes as people join us on Facebook Live as well as on Zoom. We have quite a large crowd tonight, it looks like. Welcome, everyone. Couple more minutes here and we'll get started with Bob Webster on the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. We're just waiting for some more people to join us on Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us tonight. About another minute and we'll get started here. We definitely need some elevator music or something as people log in. All right, welcome everyone. It's now 6:30. We'll begin our evening with Bob Webster. My pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. I'm your host tonight, Joe Weber. I'm on the Behringer-Crawford Museum Board, as well as a member of the Kenton County Historical Society. Behringer-Crawford Museum is supported in part by the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, Arts Wave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, the Carol Ann and Ralph V. Hale Jr. U.S. Bank Foundation, and our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining us for access to discounts and exclusive programming. Learn more and join at bcmmuseum.org. Before we begin, let's go over a few reminders. Everyone's microphone has been muted so we can all focus on the presentation. Feel free to turn off your video if you prefer. Otherwise, others on the call will be able to see you when the screen is being shared. If you have any questions or comments to share, please type them in the chat feature and we will try to get to as many questions as we possibly can immediately following the presentation. Also, there will be a quiz question tonight, so I'm going to read you that right now. The quiz question to listen for while Bob is presenting: John Davidson was set to perform that night that the Supper Club burned down. What was going to be his opening number? All right, so if you want to write that down, and after the presentation, I'll ask that question again. The first person to turn in their answer will get a free pin, which I would show that to you right now, but I don't have any. So we'll get you a free pin. You'll have to give us your name and address, of course, too, those that do win. So make sure that you're paying attention. If you want to write that down, it was John Davidson was set to perform the night of the fire. What was going to be his opening number? All right. Let's meet tonight's speaker. Author and historian Robert Webster is a Northern Kentucky native and has written numerous articles and books on the region's history, including the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, as well as the Kentucky History Award for many publications. His latest release is A Brief History of Northern Kentucky. Also, he is a member and president of our Kenton County Historical Society. So, Bob, welcome.
Thank you
for being here tonight.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak again for the museum. It's always a pleasure. I've done several of the lunches up there. It's always a great opportunity to speak to your group, as well as other groups around the area. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, so we'll get into that. Quite a few slides, so we will get right into it if you don't mind. That way we hopefully will have some time for some questions and answers afterwards. So I will try to share screen, so hopefully this works. Did have some technical difficulties, so we'll be doing sort of a condensed version of this thing here, so hopefully everyone will be able to see it. Let me know if you can't. The talk, as Joe said, will be on the Beverly Hills Supper Club, the Untold Story Behind Kentucky's Worst Tragedy. This is a book that came out about 12 years ago, and we will get right into it. I'm sure we will. Here we go. The background, as he mentioned, I'm president of the Kenton County Historical Society. I've written more than 40 articles on local history and 3-time award winner of the Kentucky History Award. Just before the book came out, I was approached by David Brock, who was a busboy at the time of the fire. He contacted the Kenton County Public Library looking for someone interested in writing a book about his interaction and his actions with the supper club that night, and was given my name. And quite honestly, I was not interested in writing another book. I just finished a book on the movie theaters, and I told him no, everything that's needed to be said has been said about the fire. I knew the basics, faulty wiring, overcrowding, locked exits, but he told me a totally different story. And I decided to listen to what he had to say. But it was quite confusing. nothing that he was telling me seemed to match what I had read in the newspapers. I did get my hands on the Kentucky State Police files, completely confused as far as what I was reading. Quickly realized that something was terribly wrong, that none of the details seemed to match. The attorney's notes from the later civil trials and things of that nature. So I decided to do some digging. I will tell you that what I'm going to be talking about tonight are just the facts. It's not my opinion or the opinion of David Brock, the busboy, or some of the other people involved. These are the original witness statements, legal depositions, reports published by the Kentucky State Police, the National Fire Protection Association, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the National Bureau of Standards, dozens and dozens of personal interviews. This was a 6-year research project. So this is not just some people's opinions. I decided quite early if I was going to do a book about the Supper Club and the fire that I would need to do a little bit more background history. I know there's a lot of people that are tuned in tonight that are from Newport or the surrounding area. So decided to do some background on early Newport. A lot of people grew up in what we all know as Sin City and things of that nature, but before 1900, the immigration in the area, mostly Germans and Italians, the Newport Barracks was constructed there, early prostitution even before 1900, church festivals and lotteries, or early gambling, slot machines were actually in the area. Gambling and drinking were just permitted. There was a lot of what we now would consider the Sin City operations well before 1900. But certainly prohibition and the alcohol consumption, that certainly is what really turned things around and really brought that era into view. The Andrew Volstead, the Volstead Act, it's really what really changed Newport and made Newport what it was. The consumption of the illegal alcohol and bootlegging operations, that really is what really set Newport into the era that we all know so well. George Remus became the bootlegging king. He knew very early that illegal alcohol, of course, was going to be the money-making operation. He knew also that legal alcohol was permitted. He had degrees in law and pharmaceuticals. He had 12, as he called them, lieutenants, and he ended up supplying the entire Midwest with legal alcohol. $2.5 million in the first 3 months. He originated what was considered payoffs, and he really ran the entire Midwest with legal alcohol that was bootlegged in. Except for the Chicago area, he was supplying the entire Midwest with the bootleg alcohol. One of his, of course, you see there in the picture that he was arrested because it wasn't a perfect operation. He still had some sheriffs and law enforcement that couldn't be persuaded by money. But one of his many lieutenants was Pete Schmidt, and once some of his henchmen were arrested and got out of jail, they started operations on their own. Pete Schmidt opened the Glen Hotel, named for his son. Jimmy Brink opened the Lookout House, Buck Brady, the Bluegrass Inn. These were all clubs that quickly learned that gambling would be the next sin that would get the revenue coming in for them. And of course, prohibition ended, and everyone had the alcohol they wanted. But the mafia quickly learned that Northern Kentucky and the greater Cincinnati area in general was wide open. Didn't seem to be much police operation in the area, so they moved in pretty quickly. Nationally, some syndicate operations from New York City and Chicago, but especially the Cleveland syndicate with Frank Milano moved in and really sent the major operation into the area. Again, other than Chicago, they were the most powerful mafia organization in the United States. Especially Morris Barney Mo Deleets, who started his career in Detroit, moved into the area. He got his start with the Little Jewish Navy. Really, protection and bootlegging was his forte, but he formed the Cleveland Four with Sam Tucker, Morris Kleinman, and Lou Rothkopf, and he moved into the greater Cincinnati area. In the 1930s, several clubs were already successful. The illegal gambling casinos were everywhere. I said Mafia heard that Newport was wide open. He spearheaded Newport, where the Levinson brothers came from New York. Sleepout Louis Levinson is a name most older Cincinnatians have heard of. He had ties with Trigger and Mike Coppola, Meyer Lansky, and Bugsy Siegel. But the Mafia enters Northern Kentucky. The Levinson brothers take over the Arrowhead Club in Cincinnati. The Cleveland mob takes over the Coney Island racetrack. I put quotes over take over because they basically went in and killed the owner and took over the racetrack. And then they targeted Pete Schmidt's Glen Hotel. Pete Schmidt was so well known in the area, they couldn't just go in and kill him. So they went in and just really roughed him up several times. They threatened him several times. I showed that they ding dong. They had an operation where they called ding donging, where they would send their henchmen in, and several of these guys would just go in and urinate in the lobby of the hotel day after day after day. Well, Pete Schmidt finally sells the club to the Cleveland Four, and Pete Schmidt decides to buy a vacant speakeasy just south of Newport called the King Tut Castle. He decides the mob can have Newport. He'll take over this King Tut Castle and make that the club of his dreams, and let the mob have Newport. So he builds what becomes the first Beverly Hills Club. It's the first of what becomes known as carpet joints. All the clubs downtown Newport are all just dirty sawdust floor joints. But this place has carpet on the floors. It has pretty chandeliers, almost wallpaper. It becomes the classiest place in the entire region. The mafia wants it immediately. And they tell Pete Schmidt that they want the club. And he tells them no. Well, you don't tell the mob no, and you certainly don't tell the mob no twice. So they burn the place down. A fire on February 3rd, 1936 would have gone completely unnoticed, just like all the other fires in the clubs down in Newport that with the clubs that they had threatened the owners before. But in this particular instance, a 5-year-old niece of the caretaker of the property, Mary Lou Rardon, was killed in the fire. Several gangsters were arrested and convicted. Red Masterson, who was probably the ringleader of the situation, walked free. And Pete Schmidt reopens the club and renames it the Beverly Hills Country Club. This is a postcard of the Beverly Hills Country Club. Not much to look at from the outside. It just looks like a brick warehouse. But this is the original Beverly Hills Country Club in the 1930s. Well, Mo Deleets and his Cleveland Four continued the harassment. They continued ding-donging. They started roughing up the customers. They actually robbed the payroll several times. And Pete Schmidt finally gives in when he goes home one night and finds dynamite planted in his basement. So he actually sells the Beverly Hills Country Club to the Cleveland Four and decides to get out of the business altogether. Well, Sam Schrader and Sam Tucker, part of the Cleveland Four, part of the Cleveland Syndicate, move in, and in 1940 they own the Beverly Hills. Sam Schrader's placed in charge. He's one of George Remus's original 12 lieutenants. At this time, there's more than 40 illegal casinos operating in northern Kentucky, none compared to the Beverly Hills Country Club. Top-notch entertainment, gourmet dining, and maybe more than anything else, these gambling games are all fair. They're not fixed like most of the ones down in Newport. In Newport, you really couldn't win if you tried. If you were successful at winning any money down at the dives in Newport, you were typically roughed up once you left, and the money was stolen from you and taken away. And you really couldn't go to the police because the police were all paid off by the clubs, it was all just everything was owned by the mob. There's some interior shots of the Beverly Hills Country Club. This was the Trianon room, the main show room. It seated about 500. The main stage you can see over there on the upper right. And I'll talk about some of the main show stars that graced that stage. This is a shot of the main bar that's seated 50 around the bar and another 50 in the same room. This was the staff of the Beverly Hills Country Club, over 200, and you can see the showgirls down in front. And this is a list of some of the entertainers that were at the Beverly Hills Country Club in the heyday: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Pearl Bailey, the Andrews Sisters, Nat King Cole. So top-notch entertainment that would have been walking up and down the street, up and down Monmouth Street every weekend. Well, in the 1940s to the 1960s, the mob expands. Jimmy Brink sells out to the Cleveland Mafia. He's the owner of the Lookout House over in Kenton County. Most of you are very familiar with the Yorkshire, Tropicana, Flamingo, the Avenue, the Stardust. These are all Mafia-owned clubs in Newport, and most of them are in Newport. Some are in the outskirts of Campbell County, and some are in Kenton County. Every few years, though, I say a group of do-gooders comes along to try to oust the Mafia and try to get rid of crime and corruption in Newport. And this time we call it the Ratterman fiasco. What happened is George Ratterman, very well known in the area, puts himself up to be named sheriff. He runs for sheriff of Campbell County. He says he can't be bribed by organized crime. Charles Lester and Tito Carenzi decide to put a plan together to disgrace him. They convince him that they want to get out of the mob, and they're gonna meet him in a bar and try to come up with a plan to get rid of the mob. Of course, their real plan is to drug him and put him in bed with one of the known showgirl prostitutes. And of course, some of the paid off police officers just happen to show up and take pictures of him in bed with her. And of course, that makes national news that this do-good sheriff is in bed with the girl. And unfortunately, a simple blood test shows that he's telling the truth. Well, many were arrested, including the policemen, the police chiefs, judges, mobsters. I mean, it really hits the fan. Many of the mob bigwigs leave, and this is before Las Vegas even exists. So some of them go out there and start Las Vegas. Some of them go to the Bahamas. But I mean, it really hits the fan, and some of the big mobsters are out of here. Most people think that the big mob leaves Newport, and some of the big wigs do, but the mob does not leave. After reform, though, wide open gambling was gone. Many thought so was the mob. Newport became a ghost town, however. Traditional businesses closed, vacant shops and storefronts. And a lot of people, a lot of you that have lived in the area for a long time will remember a 15, 20-year history of Newport where, the unemployment skyrocketed, violence escalated, the storefronts and vacant shops were everywhere. During my research, I talked to so many business owners that quite honestly told me that they wanted the mob here. They wanted the prostitution. Quite honestly, they wanted the casinos because they pretty much policed themselves. And jewelry stores, dress shops, these places, some of them were open 24 hours a day because of all the business. And they knew that if the gambling places closed, that the businesses would close too, and sure enough, they did. As far as the mob goes, most of the high-ranking members left town for Las Vegas and the Caribbean. Off-track betting still was a billion-dollar business in Newport. Union infiltration and murder for hire became their big business, but a large group of locals vied to become the new leaders of organized crime in the area. As far as the new list of players, I won't go through the list, but some of you may recognize Tito Carenzi, John Croft, Sammy Eisner, Screw Andrews, Sam Schrader, Ben Keys. These are some of the mobsters that hung around and tried to put the big mob back together. And as far as the new mob that entered Newport, most of them came from New York. And that's when you saw the infiltration of the porn shops and the adult theaters and the peep shows and the things of that nature. If there was a glimmer of hope, it was 1969 when Richard Schilling Sr. purchased the old Beverly Hills Country Club for $2 million. He promised a bunch of purchased it for $420,000. He promised $2 million in renovations. Rumors of mob threats were immediate. A June 21st, 1970 fire was ruled arson. I say police still being paid off, ? Because the Kentucky State Police ruled that that particular fire was the cause was undetermined. Even though there were 6 different fires set in 6 different places, the doors had been broken down, and that there were fuel cans found in the rubble. The state police determined that the fire cause was not to be determined. Also, the Southgate Fire Department had been called a half an hour before the fire started and told that there would be a fire at the Beverly Hills that night. Well, Richard Schilling was told not to get into the show business, but he determined that he would rebuild. He built the showplace of the nation, as he called it. He expanded the place as well, built the crystal rooms onto the outside of the building. Part of those rooms had glass ceilings, so you could actually eat under the stars. He also built a new cabaret room that had the largest capacity of any showplace in the Midwest. But the threats continued. I have some pictures here as well. He put a front facade on the old structure. You can kind of see the old brick warehouse style building covered up with this new facade. He had been out to the new Las Vegas and saw the new decorations that they put on the buildings out there. So he has the life-size statues out front and the facade on the front 2 sides of the building. This was the garden area that witnessed dozens and dozens of weddings over the years. And this is the part of the Viennese room on the inside that seated 300. This is part of the garden room. This is a shot of the main dining room that seated 500. This is a shot of the old Trianon room that we saw earlier in black and white. This is from the opposite side of the room. This is now not the largest showroom now. This would have been where old high school reunions, wedding receptions, and things of that nature would have taken place. This is the crystal rooms. This is the main bar with that beautiful 1970s paneling decor. Another shot of the main dining room. And then this is one of the only color photographs we have of the main showroom, that seats 1,000, much larger stage available. 1970s, I consider the decade of violence during my research. The Galaxy Club, Lookout House, Cabana Restaurant, all burned in suspicious fires. These were all nightclubs. Gangster killings were commonplace. Sammy Eisner was killed in a gangland style killing. Police corruption continues, I say, because most of these were not investigated very well at all. As a matter of fact, there was one nightclub arson fire in Newport, the Midwest club that burned, and it wasn't until months later that a body was found inside that had been there since the fire, so it wasn't investigated very well at all. The Tom Sawyer restaurant in Kenton County also burned. Bodies floating in the Ohio. I found one where a man had been found floating in the Ohio River, his arms and legs tied behind his back, and he had been shot. He was from Cleveland. Former Governor Breathitt had come forward saying that the Cleveland syndicate had threatened him because he was going to outlaw pinball machines because he thought that was a form of gambling. He did not outlaw them, by the way, but he had been threatened by the Cleveland syndicate. The Brass Ass, the Pink Pussycat, both burned in arson fires, as well as the Greater Cincinnati Airport Terminal building, which unfortunately killed 2 airport firefighters. These were all in the 1970s. Changes in Cleveland. Local mobs became more violent than ever in the 1970s. And I say, why is all of this important? We haven't discussed the Beverly Hills fire yet, but I want to make sure that people are well aware that this is not the 1920s to the 40s. This is not New York City, Chicago, or LA. This is the tri-state, Ohio and Northern Kentucky in the 1970s, where I found 45 car bombings, 60 murders, and 40 suspicious or arson fires in nightclubs. Back at the Beverly Hills, business was better than ever. There's a 500-room hotel and convention center planned, but more rumors that the mob wanted the place bad. Employees overhearing ultimatums that the Beverly Hills was going to be torched, but no one knew when. On May 28, 1977, the Roadrunners Club from the Ashland, Kentucky area were sent 2 Greyhound buses. A bar mitzvah had been planned, a small, intimate dinner party for some doctors and their wives. 4 separate weddings were taking place, the Dayton, Ohio Auto Club, several retirement parties, anniversaries, birthdays, and engagements. All told, 2,500 patrons and employees were scheduled to be in the club that evening, Memorial Day weekend. Early afternoon, David Brock, the busboy I mentioned earlier, entered the Zebra room. He sees maintenance workers working on ladders. Several employees, as a matter of fact, later reported to Kentucky State Police that they witnessed them in the building. The club reservationists saw unknown workers in the basement earlier that week, as well as that morning. And one waitress sees an unknown group of people cleaning the walls of the main hallway that morning. The Kentucky State Police did not investigate any of those people. From 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., several guests in the Zebra Room hear muffled blasts coming from within the walls or from the basement. They complain that their room is too hot. Patrons in the main bar and the Crystal Rooms later tell investigators they smell smoke in the club around that time. People coming up the driveway later reported they had seen smoke coming from the roof when they arrived. Many witnessed this as early as 5:45 p.m. I should try to underline this at some time because this is extremely important. People coming up the driveway between 5:30 and 8 o'clock that night later tell investigators that they saw smoke coming from the roof of the building when they arrived, but none of those people tell club staff that they saw that. In the Cabaret Room, Teeter and McDonald, a comedy duo, had just taken the stage. John Davidson is still in his dressing room. He's actually shaving at that time. He will be taking the stage as the mainliner. His opening number that night will be Southern Nights, a song made famous by Glenn Campbell. At exactly 8:58 p.m., the Vanover sisters, two waitresses, they enter the Zebra Room looking for tray stands that they will use in the Viennese room. The Zebra Room is the smallest room in the supper club. There was a small wedding reception taking place earlier, but that room had been vacant for about 20 minutes. So they go in there to find a couple of tray stands. They immediately see light smoke lingering at the ceiling, and they immediately close the doors and tell the club, one of the club owners, that they see smoke in the Zebra Room. Eileen Druckman is the club reservationist. She smells smoke as well. She informs Margie Schilling, who's one of the club's owner's wives, and she telephones authorities. By rule, Fort Thomas, Newport, and Southgate firefighters are sent to the scene. The staff begins an immediate mass evacuation of the club at that time. On the first floor, the main bar, the dining room, and the Empire Rooms are the first to vacate. In just a few minutes, more than 600 people are safely outside. Employees and owners tried to extinguish the fire. By that, I mean that many witnesses see club staff running through the building with fire extinguishers, but there are no flames visible anywhere in the building. The Viennese Rooms are notified, and 135 people are quickly flee the building there. The Cabaret Room patrons are not yet notified of the emergency. They have no idea what's going on. That room is on the other side of the building. Here's a floor plan, and of course, via Zoom, I can't use my famous little pointer to show things very well, but I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but this would be the main entrance here through the foyer and the main bar here. So everyone needs to come in from this direction. And the Empire Room is here. It seats 500, and this particular night it is full of a group of building and loan people. And here is a spiral staircase that goes upstairs to two different groups of people that are partying upstairs. The Viennese Room is here, and it's split into two different groups that evening. One is a bar mitzvah, and one is that doctors and their wives meeting. The Garden Room is full of several wedding guests, as well as private dinner parties. And then the main dining room here is also full with about 500 people. The Cabaret Room is down this long hallway here. And this is where John Davidson will be performing. But right now the comedy duo is on stage. This is one of the first shots taken that evening. You can see heavy smoke coming out of the roof of the building. But there does not seem to be much panic. As a matter of fact, the girl here in the foreground has a smile on her face. Most people at this time of the night are thinking, I hope to get this small fire put out so that we can get back in and finish our evening. On the second floor, more than 200 people are partying upstairs. Employees lead most of them down the spiral staircase and out the front door. Wayne Dammert is the upstairs banquet captain. He and several other employees lead nearly 100 people back through a service hallway. 2 people are upstairs in a dressing room. They are part of a fashion show with one of the groups upstairs. By the time they realize that there's an emergency, they will be lost in the smoke and will not survive the evening. This is one of the first color photographs taken by one of the wedding photographers that night. And not to be confused, that's not flames that you see, that's just lights from the canopy. But this is the amount of smoke that the first firefighters find when they first arrive on the scene. And this is why the first firefighter that arrives calls for backup when they first arrive. This is just about 2 minutes after 9. At 9:04, Fort Thomas and Southgate firefighters arrive. They immediately call for additional departments. Firemen begin assessing the situation. They start running hose lines, but most firefighters are assisting with the evacuation through the front lobby. There are plenty of club staff and other patrons there to assist people that have been overcome with smoke and just the excitement of the evening. But it's certainly at this point at night, it does not appear that there's going to be any fatalities. Walter Bailey is one of the dozens of heroes that evening. He is a 16-year-old busboy. He is alerted by one of the other waitresses that evening in one of the service hallways that there's a fire in the zebra room. He hasn't seen any smoke. He hasn't seen any flames. But he is alerted that there's a fire, and he is in charge of bussing some of the tables in the cabaret room. So at about 5 minutes after 9, he goes into the cabaret room and he walks to the stage and he climbs up on the stage and he takes the microphone from the comedy duo and he makes the announcement that, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but there's a small fire on the other side of the building. We ask that you please leave. There's an emergency exit to your left. There's an emergency exit to your right. You can also exit through the doors that you came in. And he hands the microphone back to to Teeter and McDonald, and he jumps from the stage. Unfortunately, hundreds of the people that are in there, most of them have just ordered their first set of drinks. Most of them are conversing with their family and friends. Most of them are not listening to the comedy duo. Most of them came for John Davidson. Most of them do not stand up and leave. Only about 1/3 of the guests stand immediately and gather their belongings and leave. They get out without any problem whatsoever. But about 2/3, about 1/3 of another third later tell investigators that they actually thought that Walter was part of the comedy routine. So that lends to another part of the problem. This is a shot of some of the guests leaving through the west emergency exit. And this is a shot of the east emergency exit, the one closest to US 27. About 9:18, firefighters finally learned that people are still exiting the cabaret room, but there's no fire there. All but about 500 people have escaped the building. Flames and smoke finally reach that cabaret room. They race out of the zebra room and down that long hallway. There are nearly 100 firefighters on the scene at that time. This is a shot from the bottom of the hill near the Oasis Club, if you're familiar with the area. At the bottom of the Beverly Hills long driveway. This is a shot much later in the evening. The supper club roof is fully engulfed. And this is obviously from the top of the hill. And this is a floor plan of the actual cabaret room. This is the main hallway coming from the zebra room. Once the flames and smoke cut off this main exit. It also made its way, smoke made its way down this service hallway, cutting off this exit. And that left the emergency exit here to the east and the emergency exit here to the west. Luckily, these doors here that led out of the room into the service hallway, the banquet captain on this side was notified early enough that he was able to switch these. These are waiter doors. So you push on the right-hand door and it opens, but the left-hand door is made to open the opposite way. But he was able to reset these so that they both opened into the hallway. So everyone on this side of the room was at least able to get into the hallway and to get out into the open air. But once in this hallway and once the power went out, everyone got disoriented and lost. And unfortunately, some people found their way into a closet. Some people found their way into the backstage dressing area. And some people just lost their lives no more than 10 or 12 feet from the outside exit. On the other side of the room, unfortunately, it was much worse. The waiter doors could not be reset in time, and you had hundreds of people trying to make their way through a 3-foot wide door, and many people were overcome by the smoke. They fell to the floor. People fell on top of them, on top of them, on top of them, and they became wedged in that doorway. And dozens and dozens of people didn't even make it out of the cabaret room itself, let alone into the outside. Folks, when I was putting the slideshow together, when I was deciding to put pictures into the book, I had a hard time deciding to put these pictures in at all. But unfortunately, we live in a time now where I say 169 people perished, and it doesn't seem to make much of an impact anymore. But this is the scene that the first responders were up against. This is the scene outside of the back of the club. And this is the scene outside the area, which was the chapel is what was used as a triage area. And this is a scene from across the road later in the evening. And this is an aerial shot from the next morning. The Fort Thomas Armory was used as a makeshift morgue, and this is where bodies were taken for the next couple of days. This is where families were taken to try to identify loved ones. The initial news releases the next morning was that there was a 20-minute delay before alerting authorities. Many fire exits were chained and locked. Nearly 3 times the capacity was in the cabaret room, and that there was no sprinkler system. Unfortunately, this was just simply terrible reporting by newsmen that wanted to be first with their story. These were all later proven to be false. Usually when I do a in-person presentation, I ask for a show of hands, and most people raise their hands that they remember that chained locked exit doors and overcrowding and things of that nature. But this was all proven to be false, but it's still remembered today. The Kentucky State Police were brought in by Governor Carroll. It was quickly determined that the fire was started somewhere near the Zebra Room, that there were major electrical problems. And Governor Carroll even suggested that it's negligent and should be indicted. But for some reason, Governor Carroll ordered bulldozing on Monday. There was also several code violations that were brought forth, the locked exits and overcrowding and the 20-minute delay. It was also reported very quickly that there was no fire in the basement, which I underlined. We'll come back to that. A grand jury was put in place to determine whether, and a special prosecutor to determine if Governor Carroll found any evidence that the shooting should be prosecuted. And I think it stunned a lot of the citizens of this area that there actually was no overcrowding found, and that there were no deaths due to code violations, and that there was no delay in reporting the fire, and no negligence on behalf of the owners. It was determined that the fire started somewhere near the zebra room, and that it was most likely electrical in nature. But because of the bulldozing and because of some of the destruction of the property, no true determination of the cause could be made. Officially, in the record books, the fire was somewhere near the zebra room, was most likely electrical, and numerous code violations led to a high death toll. But there's no mention in the Kentucky State Police reports of the witnesses who saw suspicious activity the week before. There's no evidence of fire in the basement, and there's no evidence of arson. In the weeks after the fire, Stan Chesley, some of you may recall, was put in charge of a class action lawsuit on behalf of the victims and their families. He knew pretty much from the get-go that it was going to be impossible to determine exactly what caused the fire and why so many people died. So it was turned into a class action lawsuit, the first one of its kind in the nation's history. So many people were involved, as a matter of fact, that it was broken into 3 phases. 1,151 companies or individuals were named. The first phase was aluminum wiring. If you had, if any type of aluminum wiring were involved, you were named in the suit. PVC, plastics companies were involved, and then any type of product. If you simply supplied the supper club with cloth napkins, he was going to try to prove that the smoke and fumes that were emitted from the burning of that cloth napkin is what killed everyone. Most people don't recall that he lost those suits. The aluminum wiring companies were sued, and quite honestly, the verdict was very quick and easy. Did aluminum wiring start the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire? And it was proven no, it did not. Did plastics, is that what killed everyone? No, it did not. But by the time it got to the third phase, most of these companies had settled out of court and had paid out millions and millions of dollars. But in a retrial of the aluminum wiring companies, the only company left was General Electric, and they kept trying to settle out of court, and they kept, because they knew they were not guilty. But in a retrial, the wording was actually changed, and it changed from did aluminum wiring actually start the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire to, and I'll quote this, could a binding screw, okay, I won't quote it because it just slipped my mind, but the actual wording of the trial was changed, and could a binding screw connecting aluminum wire to copper wire play a significant role in a fire? That's what it was. And the jury had to say, yes, it could. Could it play a significant role? Well, yes, it could. So Stan Chesley won that one particular retrial of that one particular phase. And that's what so many people seem to remember. But in most of the civil trials, he lost. But the victim's family still won millions of dollars, mostly from out-of-court settlements. So that's what most people remember. Well, David Brock, we'll go back to the busboy. He saw suspicious people in the building the day of the fire. He finally, several months after the fire, confronted the owner and said, has anyone ever talked to those maintenance workers that were in the building the morning of the fire? And Mr. Schilling said, what are you talking about? He said, well, they were working on the air conditioning. They told me they were working on the air conditioning in the ceiling of the zebra room. And Mr. Schilling finally confronted Brock and said, Dave, there's no air conditioning units in the ceiling of the zebra room. They burned us down. He kept quiet for 25 years because he thought he was the only worker that saw those people in the building. But at the 30-year anniversary, he talked to other employees and realized he was not the only person that saw those people there. So he went to the Kentucky State Police, and they were absolutely no help whatsoever. So he decided to pretty much form his own research team. He contacted me. He had been talking to a friend of his and co-worker, Tom McConaughey. He actually went to Glenn Corbett, who is a world-renowned fire science expert at John Jay College of Fire Science. Rodney Raby is a two-time former Kentucky State Fire Marshal. Pete Sabino, who was a retired captain with the Cincinnati Fire Department, and several others, and went through dozens and dozens and dozens of file boxes of material, retrieved all the files from the Kentucky State Police and these other jurisdictions, as I mentioned before, over 5 years of research. Most of the damaging evidence came from the original Kentucky State Police files, believe it or not. There is very little in the Kentucky State Police files that matches what was made public in the various newspaper articles. What expert investigators first discovered was quickly hushed, and there was a rush to judgment that faulty wiring would be the named culprit. For instance, May 31st and the 30th, an oil generator exploded in the basement under the zebra room, is what we were told. They promised a full investigation. They were certain of an explosion in the basement, and Governor Carroll took charge of the entire investigation. June 1st, the very next day, suddenly there was a wall of silence from the investigators. The press was kept out of the mix. The investigators ruled out the basement completely, saying it was untouched by flames. And they ruled out arson completely, even though the governor's entire task force had not even arrived on the scene. The Fire Marshal's Division were no longer allowed in the basement after Monday. Let that sink in. The Kentucky State Fire Marshal's Division were no longer allowed on the scene. What they had determined before they were kicked out was that the basement would be their major point of concentration. They had also found evidence of tampering throughout the basement. They had found timers in the rubble in the basement, and they had determined that the fire had started in an air conditioning unit below the zebra room in conjunction with a breaker box located there. We also got our hands on the Ronnie Frio photographs. He was a trooper with the Kentucky State Police. They show explosions and tampering of equipment in the basement, heavy V patterns in the basement, which are signs of a major fire, and clear evidence that the fire burned down in the zebra room and hallway, clear evidence that the fire started in the basement. And now these photographs are nowhere to be found, even though we've had lawsuits with the Kentucky State Police. We were able to take some photographs of what he had in hand. This is the air conditioning, part of the air conditioning unit that exploded under the zebra room, some of the V pattern fire, and some of the tampering that had taken place in the basement. This is wires that had been stripped and stuck into a wall outlet there. And then this is what's called a void space that fueled that fire all the way from the basement into the ceiling of the second floor. And then this is one of the walls in the zebra room where you can clearly tell that the fire burned down the wall instead of up, which it does not happen that way. Fires burn up, not down. And then this is a wall from the north-south hallway. The summary of the new investigation with the fire experts is that there is no physical evidence whatsoever to indicate faulty aluminum wiring had anything to do with the fire. There were some minor code violations that existed, but no deaths occurred as a result of those violations. Nearly a dozen witnesses had told authorities immediately after the fire about suspicious activities they had seen. None of those made the Kentucky State Police reports. Most initial investigators pointed to the basement. Some investigators were kept from going downstairs, including the Kentucky State Fire Marshals. And there is clear evidence of either a cover-up or conspiracy involving Governor Carroll and or the Kentucky State Police. The fire spread from the basement up into the walls and into the ceilings, then burned down from above. All of the physical evidence clearly points to arson. Today, there's a makeshift memorial put together by some of the survivors and mostly from employees and of the supper club that evening. The property has finally been sold to an outside firm who plans to build a retirement village and senior living facility. And I believe construction will finally start this fall. But they do plan on allowing part of the property to be a permanent memorial. And that is the story of the Beverly Hills Supper Club, the untold story behind Kentucky's worst tragedy.
Well, thank you, Bob. I think there's a lot of really good information in there. We already have a couple questions. First off, though, the trivia question was John Davidson, who was supposed to perform that night. What song was he going to perform first? And Connie Spinks won that during the speech there. It was Southern Nights, which was made famous by Glenn Campbell.
Yay, Connie.
So Connie, if you could just send that in your information, your address to the Behringer-Crawford Museum so they can send you that pin.
Kind of cool.
Let's see. We have a couple other questions as things wrap up here. Charlie and Barbara Jacobson asked, have you determined, Bob, if the governor covered up the facts or stifled the investigation? He said he's heard some say yes and others say no.
I do not have any concrete evidence that he was involved in any type of cover-up. I can't say whether he was covering anything up or if he is simply ignorant. You know, we've confronted, I say we because there's many of us that were involved in this investigation. You have to say, why in the world would you start bulldozing the property so quickly? And his answer to us was that he was so mad at the Shillings that he wanted to make sure that they could not rebuild. And of course, you know, what would the first thing that you wanted to do if you wanted to rebuild would be to level the property so that you could rebuild. So there's just several things that just make absolutely no sense. But is there any concrete evidence that would suggest that he did anything to anything illegal or anything that would make me think that he was covering anything up? I don't have anything that's concrete, but there's just a dozen things that he has done that make absolutely no logical sense to me whatsoever.
Carol Fenbers wanted to know where the zebra room was located. She didn't see it in the slides.
In the slide, the zebra room would have been if you walked in the front doors and turned right past the spiral staircase, it would have been immediately on the right. So it would have been toward the front of the building.
Okay. Let's see, who was that question from here? Daniel Shadler wanted to know, where is Walter Bailey today?
Walter Bailey was living in Texas. He has always been very helpful in our research and things. He actually spent a week with us in Atlanta looking through 157 file boxes of all this material. So great gentleman, and always great to talk with. But last I heard, spoke to him a couple of years ago, living in Texas.
Did you ever hear of a person called Screen Door? Rod Sass asked.
Screen Door?
Yes.
No.
No. Okay. Michael Ruscher, is there any truth to the rumor that the timers found in the basement that may have caused the fire were meant to go off in the morning and not in the evening?
Yes, some of the timers were set on PM and some were set on AM. It's our opinion that and I named the people actually in the book, that they were not very good at what they were doing. As a matter of fact, 2 of them blew themselves up about 8 months later in Covington, setting a arson fire for a warehouse for insurance money. But it's our opinion that the fire was actually supposed to start at 5:30 Sunday morning, not 5:30 Saturday night.
which would have made more sense. So then they wouldn't have had all the cops looking at it. Was Red Masterson seen leaving the Beverly Hills Supper Club carrying the gas cans, or was that the Beverly Hills Country Club?
That's the Country Club. That would have been the 1936 fire. And yes.
The other fires that you mentioned in the beginning, were those set during closed or open times? Like
those were always, with one exception, those were always early Sunday morning. Again, that's why we think that this fire was supposed to go off early Sunday morning.
Yeah, so that would have made a lot more sense. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here before we get going. First of all, we want to thank Bob for taking the time tonight to have this wonderful presentation. Music at BCM is tomorrow night. Ben Levin brings the blues to Behringer-Crawford. Museum amphitheater stage. Doors open at 6. Shows run from 7 to 9. Thanks to all the staff, trustees, and members of the Behringer-Crawford Museum. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest installment of Curator's Chat, where BCM Curator of Collections Jason French takes on fascinating places and artifacts from BCM's collections and across the region. Please like and subscribe. There will not be a Northern Kentucky History Hour next week. All right, the next one will be not until July 14th with Brian Hackett. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Bob, again for a wonderful presentation, and we will all see you all soon.
Thanks for having me.